Today, we're going to be talking about one of the easiest archetypes to brew in Commander. Hello everyone, my name is Deck Driver. If you're new here, please feel free to like and subscribe because we talk about Magic the Gathering and Commander especially a lot on this channel. And if that interests you, then you should stick around. Now today we're going to be talking about one of the easiest archetypes to brew, and that is, wait for it, enchantment decks. I'm of the opinion that enchantment decks are probably the easiest thing to brew besides creature decks in Commander as a whole. The amount of support that enchantments have from most colors, I guess besides maybe red and black, is some of the highest levels of support we've seen for any single archetype. So today we'll be talking a lot about how I like to brew enchantment decks, and we're going to be going over Calix Guided by Fate, which is a enchantment deck that I made. Now, enchantment decks are great. Essentially, you can have one of two things. You can have a ton of enchantments on the battlefield, have some sort of pillow fort effect, and maybe win through token creation or just some way to kind of stacks out the game and use an alternate win con. Or of course, you can go the more badass route and you can have auras. Attach a ton of auras to separate creatures or your commander alone and just beat people in the face. No matter what, enchantments are an incredibly powerful permanent type in Commander. Each deck that you go up against might have one or two spot removals for enchantments, and they might have one or maybe two sweepers for enchantments. But for the most part, nobody's going to be able to really touch your permanents. Add on to the fact that these permanents can gain protection, they can give each other shroud, and overall just be really difficult to deal with. And you have yourself a really powerful archetype for Commander. Now, in terms of actually brewing a deck, most decks want two things. They want a strategy to execute, and they want payoffs for executing that strategy. Now, one of the best payoffs you could possibly have for any strategy is drawing more cards. And enchantments have so many ways to do this. Of course, we have Sithis Harvest Hand, which says whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 1 life and draw a card. And this kind of effect is copy and pasted on so many creatures that you're really going to get a ton of value out of casting your enchantments. Everyone knows that drawing cards is the best payoff, so pretty much any enchantment deck you do build should run at least 9 to 12 of these effects. Now, in terms of ways to win with an enchantment deck, there's quite a few. Obviously, if you're going the Pillow Fort route, you can go more of those alternate win cons. Pillow Fort with Approach of the Second Sun is a great way to end a game, as long as your table is more okay with something like that. Completely stacking out the board is another way, although I don't think anyone's going to have a lot of fun with that. But of course, you can always just create some creatures with your enchantments. A card like Hallowed Haunting is probably my favorite enchantment of all time. Not only was it one of the first cards I played in my first ever standard deck, it's also just a really cool way to flood the board with massive creatures. Now, if you're flooding the board with massive creatures, another great way to end games is with an Overwhelming Stampede. Your creatures are going to have auras attached to them, or they're going to be big based off your enchantments, so you're just going to double its power and give any other utility creature that much power as well, being able to swing out and kill at least 1 to 2 players, if not the whole table. And the last true, I guess, like win condition that could come with enchantments is Nylea's Colossus. Now, this card is basically just one of the better payoffs. It does cost quite a bit of mana, so being able to do this and then trigger it once or twice in the same turn can definitely be difficult, but not impossible. Now, the last couple ways to kind of win with enchantments is any sort of creature or enchantment that gives stats based off of the amount of enchantments that you have. These are going to exponentially grow a creature or 2 or 3 so that you can end up swinging for up to 20 damage at one time, almost going over the other creature decks that you might have at the table. So now that we've talked about some win cons of decks like this, let's go over some average staples that enchantment decks might want. A card like Destiny Spinner is definitely going to be something that you want on your list, as well as maybe a Sigarda's Aid if you're going the more aura route. Destiny Spinner not only makes your creatures and enchantments uncounterable, it's also going to make sure that if for whatever reason you do stall out in the end game, you can turn your lands into massive creatures. I also mentioned Sigarda's Aid if you're ever going with an aura deck. If you know anything about me, you know I love playing at flash speed, so this is almost always an auto include in any enchantment deck I make. And then lastly is Mass Recursion. Creeping Renaissance is going to be a great card for this, as well as a card like Brilliant Restoration. Now, of course, if you have the budget for it and your pod is okay with you playing it, Replenish is also a great include. but have fun spending over $100 just to get this. A more budget option you could go for is Unfinished Business. Now, this is definitely better if you have a more aura style enchantment deck. Essentially, auras and enchantment decks want one thing. They want that inevitability. Whether you are a pillow fort deck that just wants to stack out the whole table and make sure that you are completely protected and then winning through some sort of alternate win con or just a massive creature, or you're an aura deck and you're pumping up one threat at a time, eventually somebody's going to have an answer. So then having plenty of ways to replenish these things is going to be great. You then of course want some sort of enchantment that is going to be one of the better payoffs, so Hallowed Haunting and Nylea's Colossus are great includes. So now with all that being said, let's get into the deck list I have for you today. The deck list I have for you today is Calix Guided by Fate. Calix came out in the third set of that whole Phyrexia block that we got in the Aftermath set. So a lot of people actually don't really know about this commander, but you should. Calix states, whenever Calix, Guided by Fate, or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Then, whenever Calix or an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may create a token that's a copy of a non-legendary enchantment you control. Do this only once each turn. Now, Calix himself is a pretty expensive card because this effect is pretty crazy. This deck is a fairly balanced deck. We've got plenty of mana sources, we've got plenty of payoffs, a ton of enchantments, some of the staples that we're looking for, and of course some win conditions. For the mana base, it is a pretty standard budget mana base. We've got quite a few tapped lands, but we have some lands that end up having types on them that we can use to search up with some of our ramp pieces. We then have a whole load of basics that are pretty evenly distributed based on the amount of colors we have. We kind of surprisingly have more green than we do white, so we have 14 forests and 11 plains. Overall, with these normal lands and dual lands, plus an MDFC, we have 36 lands. I think 2 less than 38 is totally fine here, as we have plenty of cost reducers as well as some ramp pieces, and our curve essentially tops out at 5 mana. So 36 seems fine here. As for our cost reducers, we have a whole assortment of cost reducers, and the rest of our mana is split between Arbor Elf, which is great since we do have enchant lands in here. We've got a Sanctum Weaver to make a ton of mana. And of course we have some stereotypical land ramp. We don't want to have a ton of enchant land ramp because if there ever is a sweeper for enchantments, we don't want to be completely blown out because of it. Therefore, from the original kind of brew of this, I did replace it with a Rampant Growth and a Nature's Lore. I think it just builds more consistency and makes sure that you're not going to get blown out completely. Next, let's go into the triggers. Now let's go into the auras. I also like to call them triggers because if we're being totally honest, what we want is a payoff mainly, which could be Calix or any of our draw engines. So these auras are pretty evenly split between removal, protection, and then of course buffing. If any of these cards or enchantments enter the battlefield and draw us a card, it's even better because we are going to be copying them with Calix. I then of course have a ton of flash speed enchantments because you know me, I love being interactive and I love playing on the stack. So a few of these are able to help protect some creatures, and a few of these can be played sort of like a combat trick. And you know I love combat tricks. Then of course, pretty much every single enchantment removal, like a Chimera's Transformation or Darksteel Mutation, is in this list. There have been thoughts about maybe replacing some of these to have a bit more firepower or draw, but for now, I think these are fine. And we can definitely play more of a mid-range grindy kind of style where we're not popping off super fast because enchantments can get extremely powerful really fast. Now that we have our mana base and our triggers / auras, let's go into our payoffs. Like I said in the intro, payoffs are pretty easy to come by. And most of our payoffs outside of our win conditions are just incredibly powerful draw engines. And pretty much every single one of our payoffs is a draw engine because the other payoffs could really just be seen as win conditions. Some cards to note here is Light Pause. Light Pause almost brings a level of inconsistency to the deck because when you draw Light Pause, it's incredibly powerful and you become the threat almost immediately. And when you don't draw Light Pause, the deck performs as normal. So there have been thoughts about maybe taking Light Pause out of this deck, but for now, Light Pause stays. The next card that is not necessarily an enchantment draw engine, but is still going to be really good for the deck is Kutzil Malamute Exemplar. Kutzil allows you to potentially draw multiple cards because all of your creatures are going to be modified or higher power than base. Since not only do these enchantments buff them, but Calix does too with his +1/+1 counters. So Cutzel is a great include in this deck. One of the most important things to consider with any of these payoffs is that a lot of them are enchantments, which can be copied through Calix, which means that you're going to be drawing 2 for each of them, turning all your enchantments to 2-for-1s, and copying again, making it 3-for-1s, or having multiple of the effects, making it so much card draw you don't even know what to do with it. So now that we have the card draw out of the way, let's get into some staples. Grasp of Fate is by far the best copy target we could possibly have, being able to get 3-for-1 every single time we get one. And Winds of Wrath is also going to be a great include in this list, because our creatures are going to be enchanted, and we got to make sure that the rest of them are completely gone. Lastly, of course, I did spend quite a bit of the budget on a Heroic Intervention and Dawn's Truce, because the last thing we want to get destroyed by is a sweeper. So we make sure our permanents are protected. And lastly, let's talk about the win conditions. So any sort of All That Glitters or Ethereal Armor is going to be incredible in this deck, and we run pretty much every single effect of that nature. Now imagine you had that effect slapped onto a creature with Elevere of the Wild Court. Elevere essentially puts an All That Glitters onto any creature you want when she enters or attacks. This is going to be incredible and is going to give you so much value that you eventually just take over the game because of the amount of trample enablers you have within the deck. Next, we run an Overwhelming Stampede. Like I said in the intro, an Overwhelming Stampede is going to be incredible for this deck. A lot of our draw engines are creatures. Some of our enchantments and mana sources are creatures. So making sure that at least one of them is completely massive and maybe around 20/20 to then play an Overwhelming Stampede to give all of our creatures 20/20. Just make sure that we're definitely going to win the game. You're almost always going to have one big threat, which is all that really matters. Then of course my 2 favorite win conditions, Nylea's Colossus and Hallowed Haunting, is in the list. These cards are going to be incredible includes for this list, and you can copy both of them with Calix's ability. If you ever get to the point where you're able to copy a Hallowed Haunting, you probably win that game, as you're going to get way too big, way too quickly. And that is Calix Guided by Fate. Like I said, enchantments are some of the easiest decks to brew. This deck is relatively straightforward, and it might look like a normal auras and enchantment deck, but it's got a few of my twists in there. We do run a lot of these flash speed enchantments because I like being a bit reactive, and most of our normal enchantments that we have in the deck are removal pieces, because you know how much I like interacting with the board. So this is a heavily interactive enchantment list with a lot of flash speed enabled due to Sigarda's aid, as well as just some enchantments having flash on their own. I then make sure that there's plenty of draw support within the deck, because you know I also love drawing cards. The goal of this deck is not to pop off as soon as you get into the game. The goal of this deck is to make sure to find your spots well, wait for somebody to pop off, and then play a Kenra's Transformation, only to copy it and hit somebody else. This deck is able to draw so many cards, and eventually you're going to slap an Ethereal Armor on your commander or one of your mini creatures that we have in the list, and you're just going to hit them as hard as you can in the face. So, slow and steady wins the race is the key to this deck's success. Now that we talked about enchantment decks on this channel, I think it's finally time we dip our toes into some creature decks on this channel too. I think I received a comment about a week or two ago that talked about how I play a lot of instants and sorceries in my lists, which is completely fair, and even this list has a lot of removal and a lot of flash speed in it. At the end of the day, I have my own style, but I definitely can see as a deck tech channel that I should play some creature decks as well. So don't worry, you'll be seeing a few of those here shortly. So thank you for making it this far into the video, and if you did, comment down below what your favorite enchantment deck is. I didn't really dive too much into Bant or the color red or black in this list very much, although they do still have plenty of support there as well. I just know that if you're going to play enchantments, you should probably play with green-white, but there certainly is plenty of other enchantments out there that you should explore yourself. So if you guys have enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. And if you're looking to pick up any Magic singles, check out the link in the description where you can buy cards directly from me. I get cards through distribution and I sell them directly at MSRP. So if you want to get cards at a great rate, support the channel directly, or you want to build your own enchantment deck, feel free to check the description. Besides that, the Moxfield link is down there too, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. See ya!